Recorded now. Fantastic. If you're uncomfortable, you can turn off your camera. If not, as soon as Eric and Anne are going to start, we're going to be on speaker view. So you can still turn on your camera there. And now I just want to start by saying bonjour à tout le monde and welcome to the second day of PowerSkills 2021. The Courage Strikes Back. It's hosted by the Career Advising and Transition Services of McGill School of Continuing Study. My name is Nayo Gariepi and I'm part of the CATS team. I have my wonderful colleague here, Diana Viola, if you want to say hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, hi. And also, we're going to have a few people handling the chat. So like I said, we really encourage you to use it as much as possible. We want to know how you're feeling and where you're at. So there's a few things, like I said, the session, you can watch it after again and again on our Facebook page. It's also going to be added on our YouTube. If you have any questions, feel free to write to cats@mcgill.ca. And also, I'm going to introduce our amazing moderator today, Eric Dupont. So he's the Undergraduate Academic Coordinator in Translation at McGill University School of Continuing Study. And he's also a highly esteemed best-selling author and a really cool guy to know. So let's give him a warm welcome, and I'll give you the mic.
All right, thank you, Nayo. It's great to be here today. I have a fantastic person to introduce to you. This is Ann Marie Boulanger, who recently was hired as a course lecturer for our translation program. Now, Ann Marie is also a successful translator. She owns a translation company. And we're here today to talk about a change that happened in her career. Our presentation is called A Foot in Both Worlds, from a commercial to a literary translation. So Ann Marie, you recently started to teach translation with us. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yes. Hi, Eric. Hi, everyone. So yes, I did start last September at McGill. So this is my second semester teaching. Funny enough, I had no formal link to McGill. I'm actually a graduate of Concordia. I did my BA and my MA in translation and translation studies. But last summer, I was quite unexpectedly approached by the translation studies team at the School of Continuing Studies to teach at McGill. And it was quite an honor, quite an opportunity, and I couldn't say no.
Mm-hmm. It's great to have you here today because you have a great story to tell us about how to restart or to find a new horizon in a career in which you thought you had seen everything. Now, Ann Marie, you are a professional translator. Can you tell us more about your job and how long you've been doing it? And what does it mean to when we talk about commercial translator? What is a commercial translator?
Yep. So I've been translating for 22 years since I finished my BA. I have a bit of an unusual backstory. I did go through the Institute of Cooperative Education at Concordia. So that allowed me to do 3 internships while I was an undergrad. And during that time, I met the gentleman who, along with his wife, would go on to found the translation company that I now own. When I graduated in 1999, they offered me a job as their very first employee. Together, we built up the company. We moved twice to bigger offices. We expanded, hired in-house translators and administrative employees. Then in 2005, they decided to leave Canada to buy a house in Normandy in France and live la belle vie and a beautiful retirement, semi-retirement. And they offered me the opportunity to buy their company. And again, it was an opportunity I couldn't refuse. So I found myself in my late 20s running a decent sized translation company with half a dozen full-time translators. And we did really well. We thrived between 2005 and 2012. We had large contracts from clients in pharmaceuticals, insurance, government, private corporations. I also worked for the major translation agencies in Montreal. Then in 2012, though, there was a bit of an industry shift. There were a lot of contractions and mergers that happened in big pharma and insurance. And that actually led to the elimination of a lot of in-house corporate translation departments. These big companies essentially eliminated their translation departments and outsourced to agencies. So that had the ironic effect of me, the agencies I work for, offering me work from my former direct clients for less money. And I unfortunately had to change my business model. I couldn't sustain the business model of in-house translators. That became too hard to support. So I made the difficult decision in 2012 to downsize. So it was just me and my full-time assistant. And it was tough, but it had the instant effect of turning my business around profit-wise, and we've really been thriving ever since. We mostly have clients, direct clients in public, private, parapublic sectors. Almost entirely, my business comes to me through referrals and word of mouth, and the members directory for my professional organization, OTIAC. So generally, we're busy. We have projects in the pipeline for a couple of months in advance, usually.
You have projects in the pipeline for a couple of months. That means that if I wanted, for example, to hire you as a translator, I'd call you or write to you and you'd tell me, oh, maybe at the end of March I can do it.
I would always have room for you. No, no, I have, what I mean by that is that I have several large projects lined up, which will keep me busy, but I have regular clients that, you know, I'm hit daily with demand, with requests. From some of these customers who need things on a, you know, daily or not necessarily daily, but at least weekly basis. So in addition to those long-term ongoing projects, I have to fit in constant ponctuel, les demandes ponctuelles, ad hoc demands, requests from my regular clients.
And that happens all the time, eh? You work on a large project for a client and you send the project off, it's been proofread and everything. And the first thing you know is that they need to modify it like every fourth day, you know, every 4 days they decide that they updated the project. Does that happen to you?
It happens, these famous mise à jour, yes.
Yeah, updates, yes.
So
and
but you asked me about commercial translation. What is a commercial translator? So it's by that we generally mean translation that's done by a freelance professional translator for commercial purposes, for pay, often with deadlines, short deadlines. So we're essentially translators for hire. Commercial translations generally done in a business context. So it's for specific purposes. There are client specifications. So think of things like annual reports, financial statements, memos, forms, press releases, but it can also be technical or scientific documentation, academic works. Basically, it's practical, utilitarian documents that serve a purpose and get a message across.
Just a quick question. Is that what you thought when you started studying translation? Is that kind of document, is that what you thought you'd be translating in your career? Were you prepared for that?
Yes, because those are generally the types of documents that we are exposed to in the translation programs. General documents, technical, scientific, medical, legal. The translation programs touch on literary translation, but maybe one course. So the focus of translation programs is really to train translators to be commercial translators.
All right. And what makes you good at it? Because you're obviously good at it. You have a lot of, you have a high volume of translation that you handle. What are the skills that you have that make you good at it?
Well, there's a few I can think of. First off, you need a really in-depth understanding of the source language or the language that you translate from. So in my case, that's French. You also have to have excellent writing skills in the language you translate to, which is English in my case, because translators are necessarily writers, even if the content isn't our own. Then you need strong research skills. We're really Google masters. You need to be adaptable, a fast learner, because there are always new tools, new software coming out that will help you be more productive. Speed and agility, you need to be productive if you want to be profitable. You need to be meticulous, extreme attention to detail. You need to be able to withstand the stress of constant tight deadlines and heavy workloads. And through that all, you have to remain calm under pressure. And then if you're a freelancer, you have to have basic business skills. So on top of that, you need to, basic bookkeeping and accounting, customer relations, project management, marketing, networking. So you wear all the hats as a freelancer.
Yes. So basically, you were in a position, or until that change happened, you were in a position that any translator I know would like to be in. You own your own company. You actually bought the company that hired you. You have a high volume. You're respected in your field. But recently, your professional life has changed. You decided to step on the other side of the mirror. Why?
Why? The question. Well, many translators that I know think of themselves as thwarted or frustrated writers.
Do they?
Yeah, a few, several that I know personally. And for whatever reason, we can't or we won't write our own novels, our own stuff. So the next best thing is to translate them. And I'm no different. Short of writing a novel, I always knew that I wanted to translate one. So it's always been a secret ambition of mine. And I felt the time had come, really. I was finally in the right place career-wise to attempt it. And I'm doing, as you said, I'm doing very well professionally. I'm not lacking for work. So I wasn't going to be taking a risk financially, so to speak. But the only risk that I could have seen, honestly, was that I might have been bad at it. And, that would have been a blow to the ego, but not life altering. I wouldn't have gone broke. So the work that I do every day, it is stimulating. It's interesting while I'm doing it, or I wouldn't still be doing it. And I give every job, my 100%. A lot of it is also very important, timely work, especially since the start of the pandemic. But at the end of the day, I don't usually go to bed, proud of a standard operating procedure that I've translated that day. So I just needed to switch gears. I needed something more creative in my day-to-day work, or more creative than my day-to-day work. And I was after something more enjoyable and more satisfying.
Yes. So basically, for everyone who's listening, it is agreed in the world of translation that literary translation brings in less than commercial translation. It's not as lucrative. It doesn't pay as much. But how less, or what's the cut, basically? What's the damage in terms of percentage, let's say?
Well, I can't give exact figures because everybody works for different rates, but the rates for literary translation in Canada are generous compared to elsewhere. Thanks to grants, there's available grants and subsidies for the arts. But literary translation does pay substantially less than the premium rates that you can charge for commercial translation. And I would say anywhere easily up to 25% less.
Yes. I still, we've cleared that you were doing that at the same time that you were doing commercial translation. You were translating, you were a literary translator at the same time. So you did not interrupt, you did not stop your commercial business to be a literary translator.
No, I wish that I could have, but commercial translation is my livelihood. I have a mortgage, I have bills to pay, I have a child, I have a 5-year-old son to raise, and I had to do both at the same time. So I worked it in the evenings when my son was in bed, or early mornings when he was up at 5:30 or 6 in the morning. And even I would squeeze it into my workday when things were quieter. So I got it done, but it was difficult to constantly switch those mental gears between the two different types of translations. So very often I would translate a few hundred words of the novel in between two commercial jobs. which wasn't easy because there are two completely different mental zones. So but I was lucky though that I had a generous deadline for the novel to work with. So I could, you know, when things got really busy with work, I could put the novel aside for a week or two and not fall behind.
Now I would like to talk about the most important aspect of this all, which is the text that you decided to translate, the novel you decided to translate. I once met a translator, a commercial translator, who read a novel, and who told me that after reading that novel that he wanted to be a literary translator. And he basically did that. He just started being a literary translator, is very successful. And is this something similar that happened to you? Because let's talk about the book that you decided to put your commercial translation on hold to translate a particular book. Would you like to talk about that book, how you found it, and why you decided that it was worth taking a pay cut to translate this book into English?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, when I got into it, I had no clue where to start. I knew next to nothing about the literary translation scene in Quebec and Canada. And it's funny how commercial and literary are two different types of the same thing, but they don't mingle. They're
No.
like completely distinct from each other. And like, you know, never the twain shall meet. And so naively, I went about it a little differently. And I set out to find a book to translate. So I scoured the websites of publishers that I had heard of, booksellers, libraries. I became active on Twitter in the literary scene and the literary translation scene. So I sort of tapped into the pulse of the industry. And that's when I came across La Femme de Valence by Annie Perrault, and the synopsis, there it is. The synopsis spoke to me, and I read the whole book, and I was just really, I was you know, blown away. It features parallel storylines of a mother and a daughter. And I'm both of those things. So I could instantly relate to both perspectives. The mother's sense of feeling overwhelmed and appearing collected on the surface, while meanwhile she's unraveling. And the daughter's confusion and devastation at being abandoned and her search for answers. So it stayed with me. And then fortunately, I'd made contact with my editor, Peter McCambridge, a few years earlier, and we had always kept in touch. And I translated an excerpt for him, which he posted on his blog, Quebec Reads. And ultimately, he decided that he'd like to go ahead translating the whole thing for QC Fiction, where he's the fiction editor. So I'm very lucky in that respect. Maybe this experience has spoiled me, but working with Peter and by extension, Robin Philpott at Baraka Books has really been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. And I couldn't have asked for a better first experience, honestly.
I must say, Anne Marie, that I read the book, of course, and half of your translation, basically, because it just wasn't ready when I read the French book. And you're right when you say that this book stays with you. I mean, it stays with you more than the annual report of the Ministry of Culture.
This is true.
Yes, it does. It haunts you. It comes back to, you know, this book wants an answer. You know, it's asking you a question and it wants an answer. Now, even more important that for the people who are listening to us, has it changed the way you translate your commercial contracts? I mean, are you a different commercial translator now that you've been a literary translator? And if so, how?
I think so, yes. After experiencing the fulfillment that literary translation brings to me, I'm having a hard time accepting commercial work that I know is going to be a tough slog or that is going to be stuffed in a filing cabinet somewhere gathering dust. In terms of commercial translation, I'm starting to become more interested now in doing meaningful work that's a little bit more high profile, work that's going to find a readership and potentially contribute something or make a difference. I've recently translated a few educational books for kids for a well-known Quebec publisher. I have a few more lined up, so I really love doing that. And
do you want to name them? Do you want to say their name?
I could. En français, c'est petit génie, and in English, it's shoebox, shoebox media.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, they're well known. And I'm currently working with a great colleague on a series of online mental health workshops, which will be very valuable, I think, in the current climate. So that's important.
So basically, you're the translator. I could compare this to somebody to a Montreal or a Quebecer who goes to Rome for the first time, has pizza over there, comes back to Canada, and doesn't want
the double pizza
anymore. So basically,
it's fair to say that I'm becoming a little bit more discerning about the commercial work that I take on. Yes.
So you ask yourself, is this going to fulfill me? Is this an act of communication that I want to be a part of? Is that?
Yes, but at the end of the day, I still have to pay the bills.
Yeah, I know.
So yes, but there is certain work out there that is interesting me less and less.
Because you're making me think now that being a commercial translator, and you said earlier, we are translators for hire. When we accept a translation mandate, a translation contract, we basically are invited to take part in an act of communication that we have not initiated, that we have not projected, that we are, they're just hiring our brains for that. And it basically, from what I understand, is that literary translation made you realize that if you are going to lend your brain to an act of communication, it might as well be something you believe in.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And it's also unlike, commercial translation is typically done, like you said, for organizations or corporations, and we often never put faces to names. As opposed to translating literature, translating a novel, which is it's a deeply personal activity for the author and for the translator. And of course, there's the pressure to get it right and to do it justice. But more than that, you want the author's words to sing in your own language, in the target language. And you do that using your own words and words that are, a reflection of you. And so ultimately, even though the thoughts and ideas in the book, in La Femme de Valence, aren't mine, the novel in its English version has become a reflection of both me and Annie, the author. So, and my name is on it. And so that's, that's what you're getting at, is that's something that differs from commercial translation, where we work behind the scenes, invisibly, so to speak. And our work passes for our clients' work. And we rarely, if ever, get public credit or recognition. And that, that's okay. That's part of the deal. It's what we sign up for as commercial translators. But with literary translation, it's very nice to be acknowledged for my work, even if it's just by the fact that my name appears in the book or somewhere on the book. It's funny, I actually discovered in literary translation, there's a bit of a movement, even with its own hashtag name the translator.
Oh, yes.
And translators take great offense when the book that they've worked on or publicized is talked about with no mention of their name attached. And as though the author, simply conjured up a fully formed version of their work in another language. So justifiably, they take offense. We deserve our fair share of the credit, because there would be no such thing as world literature if there weren't translators. So unfortunately, there's no such movement in commercial translation. Nobody's going to, get incensed and tweet, name the translator, when a Fortune 500 company publishes their annual report in another language. So I'm not complaining about the recognition. It's nice.
Hey, by the way, let's talk about Annie Perrault. We haven't talked about this. Annie Perrault is the author of the novel you translated. Have you been in contact with her? Have you?
Funny enough, we have not met in person, but given the circumstances, obviously. But no, she's been fantastic. I worked with her fairly closely throughout the whole process. I would send her questions. She was very responsive, very generous with her answers. She would, sort of steer me back onto the path if I had misunderstood something. very generous with her comments. She loved the translation. She was, very kind about it, and she's very enthusiastic. She's excited about the whole process. So
Yes.
she's been lovely to work with.
Yes. I think, Anne Marie, maybe it would be great. We have a few minutes left. I wonder if the audience has questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel Martinez. Yes, it's true. Translators' names are omitted in reviewers' articles that are all over the world. Everybody knows that books translate themselves by magic.
Yes, of course.
They're actually put in Google Translate, aren't they?
It happens all the time, unfortunately, and there are a core group of literary translators on Twitter. They're great people, and if that happens, they call people out. I've seen people call out Le Devoir for not mentioning translators' names. It's translators, we band together, we stick together, and if a book gets mentioned without the translator's name attached to it, somebody's bound to flag it.
Calling out Le Devoir, yes.
Yeah.
Join the club. Add your reason.
Yeah.
The Devoir call out. Yeah, I'm sure. Yes. It seems that somebody in the audience has called out Le Devoir.
Yeah.
Times. I see it too. I know that there's one literary translator in Canada who's very active on this front. Her name is Madeleine Stratford.
Yes.
Yes, she's I wonder if she hasn't started that movement. Crystal Crow's asking, now that you've translated a book, are you thinking writing your own?
That's a great question, Crystal, but unfortunately, as of today, I am still a thwarted writer. I'm going to stick to translation for now.
Great. Any more questions from Melanie is asking? Thank you for this. She's wondering if you ended up picking the publisher and if it was difficult to get them on board.
Actually, no. Like, as I mentioned, I had made contact with Peter McCambridge, the fiction editor at QC Fiction, several years back. And I just, I had wanted to translate an excerpt for him, and then, got into doing a master's degree. And then I had a baby in the middle of a master's degree. And so I put the literary translation project on the back burner. And so when I approached Peter again, he was very open, and he invited me to translate, pretty much anything for his blog. He's very open to publishing samples on his blog, by the way. And then I told him about La Femme de Valence. He read it, and he fortunately liked it as well, and thought that it would jive with the style of QC Fiction, and and I was lucky that he decided to go ahead with the project. So he was enthusiastic from the start.
And it is actually through Peter that we met.
Yes.
So,
Yes, we did at a literary event, I think. Yeah.
Yes, that's it. We was kind of networking, and now can you define commercial translation? What about everything between political text transcription, academic article? Is that for you commercial enough? Maria Serra Serrano is asking.
I think for me, it's a broad definition, maybe too broad, but anything that's not literature is commercial. So, it's if it conveys a message, if obviously you're paid to do literary too, so I can't say that it's whether you're paid or not paid, but but it's, literature is for enjoyment. It's I wouldn't say that.
Yeah. Also, they also consider, I think that the Canada Council for the Art considers if you translate an essay on political thought, let's say, that's considered, in their terms, it's considered literary translation.
I believe it, because it's it's a langue recherchée. It's there's lots of questions.
Yeah.
Would I go into literary full time if I had the opportunity? I don't think so. I don't think I would, because I would probably miss the aspects of commercial translation. I mean, my sort of dream career moving forward is really to try to balance the three: balance commercial, literary, and teaching. I've discovered that I really, I have a fondness for teaching. So That would be my sort of ideal career moving into the second half of my career.
Ekaterina Huerta is asking if you're interested in literary translation, would you recommend we approach publishers directly like you did?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I'm still sort of naive. I'm still learning a lot about the industry, but I generally think that's how it happens. Translators pitch ideas to publishers. Correct me if I'm wrong, Eric. But
oh yes, well, you know what? The person Peter McCambridge, who translated all of my most of the books that I've written that have been translated into English have been translated by Peter McCambridge, and he actually contacted me. He didn't contact my publisher. He read one of my novels and he wrote to me an email, and we met, and that's how it started. So he contacted the author. He went straight to the source.
yeah.
Of course, it helps if the author is alive, but
well, I actually did that with a short story I translated by Julie Bouchard. She won the Prix de la Nouvelle at Radio-Canada, and I contacted her directly because I mean, again, naivete, I didn't know that, of course, I have to contact her rights holder, which was Radio-Canada. So, but I mean, she knew that I was interested, and she advocated for me to the rights holder. And generally the rights holders are, are happy to see their authors' works translated. It's publicity for them. So
yeah, Luba is asking to me, but that's also a question for maybe Annie Perrault. How was it for you being translated into English as both a writer and a translator? Well, as a writer, I would say that when I read, for example, The American Fiancé or A Song for the Cold of Heart, which was the title in English in Canada, translated by Peter, the way I describe it is, it's as if it's as if I was walking in town, and I would see somebody surrounded by people somebody who had stolen my clothes and who was telling my stories with just a great gist, who had bettered my story. And I would just stand back and look at it and be charmed.
It's funny you say that, because Annie actually said to me at one point, she goes, wow, she goes, I think some places, like, I sound better in English. So
no,
it was very humbling to me. That was very humbling. I was like, wow, I guess I succeeded.
What you think is, okay, this is how I would tell the story if I were a native speaker in English. Yeah. That's how I would like the story to be told, Of course, that's when you're very satisfied with the translation, which, as we know, some authors will publicly say that they didn't like the translation.
Right.
Yeah. And we're lucky because the authors, and in the world that we live in, the authors or the translators, they usually read both languages. But in most cases, for example, most authors cannot evaluate or assess the quality of a translation into English, or because they don't speak it, or yeah. And she liked the stolen clothes metaphor. There's another metaphor I've heard of that I don't use. It's an author said it's as if he went home and somebody had redecorated or changed the furniture.
Same place, different decor. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm glad to see that you're going to translate more, because
I hope so.
And this is a French-Canadian author speaking. We need to be translated. We need talented translators like you. I would like to thank you for doing that. This is l'écrivain, speaking. And thank you very much, Anne Marie, for this great conversation that we had today. I hope that everybody could take something home from it. And Nayo, would you like to close the meeting now?
Yeah, for sure. I'll be closing the meeting, and thank you so much for the engaging conversation. I see Maria also added a nice comment there. Hopefully we're going to add them on the Facebook group so we can continue the conversation afterwards. You can watch this session again and again, and hopefully connect between each other if you're not already all connected. And let me just see here real quick. So the next session happening now, in a few minutes. We have Jared Lee, who started 5 minutes ago, but you still have time to jump in, talking about design thinking. We have Sina Foley, an HR professional, who is also happening 5 minutes ago, but you can still jump in. And Hassan Akmal at 2 o'clock, a career expert from California, expert in diversity and inclusion, and so much more. Now, this event was offered for free by McGill School of Continuing Studies and CATS. If you liked it and would like to see more of them, feel free to donate. I'm going to be sharing a quick link here for the recordings, for staying in touch with us. We also have a mentoring platform and so much more. So just a quick one-stop shop for all of the comments I just said here. Let me just put that in the chat. Fantastic. Hey, I want to say thanks to Eric and Anne. Like, you guys were like a magnificent duo. I love the connection you had between each other. And thank you so much, everyone, for engaging and adding to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you all for your great questions. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Ann Marie. Thank you, Nayo.
Thank you, Nayo.
Hey, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Diana, also for handling everything in the behind the scene. So see you in the next session, or see you anywhere else.